This episode of Undercommon Taste is sponsored by...
Are you looking for a D&D podcast with a dark side? Something more like Game of Thrones and less like Monty Python? Tale of the Manticore is part dark fantasy audio drama, part solo D&D RPG. There's no plot armor here. The dice make all the important decisions. Join me as I resurrect the excitement, wonder, and emotion of old school D&D. Made for a mature audience, Tale of the Manticore is both a fiction and a game. It's the story where chaos rolls.
Hello and welcome to Undercommon Taste. This is a podcast where we create and discuss homebrew content for tabletop RPGs.
Once more, we sacrifice the comfort and safety for the glowing lure of treasure and gold.
I'm Ian Woodworth, and I'm joined by my co-host James Daly. Today we have two special guests with us, Thomas and Andrew from Lords of Gallipae Games, here to talk about their game Trail of Heroes. Thomas, Andrew, welcome to Undercommon Taste.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for showing up with us.
And like I said earlier, it's Gallipae, Lords of Gallipae.
And I asked before we started...
Yes.
I asked before we started...
confused. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna be good for once.
I'm gonna add it in my notes. Gallipae. All right. So anyway, now that we got all of that awkwardness out of the way, Thomas, Andrew, would you like to introduce yourselves a little bit and your company?
You go first, Thomas.
All right, name's Thomas. Been, 3 years now as part of the LLC. Been playtesting for at least 6. So
Way more than that.
way more than that, technically. But yeah, so I've been around pretty much since Andy decided to go on his own and make his own company. But I'm in charge of marketing and advertising for the company. So I do the front end. Andy does all the back end stuff. So
Awesome. So you're the front of the horse?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
I do all the creative stuff behind the scenes that nobody gets to really hear me talk about because I'm not good at talking. There was an incident at a convention. I didn't do anything horrible. I just made myself very embarrassed. And my friend Drew, who was with me at the time, said, "Andy, you're no longer allowed to talk to anyone."
We all need a friend like that some days. You know what? It's like, dude, you know what? Just step on back. We got you taken care of. Do your stuff. We'll cover the rest.
Just here, hand me the shovel. Stop digging. I've needed that friend on occasion myself.
See, Ian and I, we're the kind of friend that'll just hand like, oh, the shovel's not working. Here's some dynamite.
Let me go grab the jackhammer for you.
Yeah.
I think I have a mole machine around here somewhere.
Oh.
All right.
So, what was your inspiration for the game? Like, what got you saying, hey, you know what? We can make a game, but we need it this way and better.
Okay.
That's always a hard thing to start with.
So this is the greatest secret of my company. I started working on this game in 6th grade as a math project because I always wanted to create my own system just for fun. And I was told, you have to create a game that has something to do with math. And my math teachers, I'm just going to call her my math teacher because I don't remember her name. Her only stipulation was it had to include math, and her definition of that was there were numbers or patterns or anything like that somewhere in the game. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to create a tabletop RPG. And my dad's like, no, you won't. So I started on it, and he was more and more surprised as I continued. And I think my first iteration of it had like one paragraph of rules, and he looked at it and he pointed to it and he goes, what about this? I'm like, oh crap. So I ended up with probably about 20 pages of rules for the game when I turned it in as a project. And even though no one got to play test it because they never got past reading the rules, because as much as I insisted they just skip reading the rules because it's a tabletop RPG, and they all insisted on reading all the rules. So no one actually got to playtest the game, but I got an A on my project because I did more work than anyone else. But from there, it kind of took a back burner, and I worked on it a little bit throughout the years. And then in college, I started working on it more because I didn't actually get any D&D playtime. And then when 4th edition came out, I'm like, screw it. I really need to focus on this, get this out now, because it was almost immediately clear that D&D was taking a dive. And I was like, now is the time to have a new game. So I worked feverishly on it. And then in 2016, I decided, you know what? I'm going to start a business with this game. Actually, in 2013, I published it for the first time. That was an interesting experience. And then in 2016, I started my own company. And Thomas had actually been helping me since
It was
2007, I think.
Yeah, it was like senior year of high school, something around that time period.
Well, it was halfway through high school is when you started playing it with me, but I think you actually started it got official around 2007.
Yeah, we signed a contract around that point.
Yeah. And then in 2016, he was in the Navy, and I left my day job to exclusively work on the company. And ever since then, that's all I've been doing. My game in general, what I used to focus on is simplicity and customization. At this point, it's customization and replayability. Simplicity has gone out the window because I kept trying to make it more simple, and that just backfired. But the customization and replayability have gone through the roof over the past few years. What I love about the game is you can literally take any character and do anything you want with it. You just have so many possibilities of a character and a party makeup. There's not like any character that is an essential character for a party, especially depending on the GM. It's wonderful. Like I've said, I've been playing this since I was in 6th grade. I have yet to come across a point where I have tried everything. And I'm 33. It's been a while. And I still haven't tried everything. And that's extremely exciting to me.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And replayability and customization are two really big pillars that you definitely need with a game. If it's a tabletop game, if it's a video game, if it's anything where you play it once and you have to set it down because you've done everything with it, that always makes the game kind of lackluster. And I love customization. You see a lot of games, particularly the past 10 years or so, where they're trying to get more and more casual players have really cut down on the customizations to make the games more simple, as you say. And I find that works with some games, but in a lot of games that has been a massive, massive drawback.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and step in here real quick, just so everybody knows what it is we're talking about. What is Trail of Heroes?
Oh, yeah. I never said that, did I?
Wait,
it's a 6th grader's
bad
game.
at talking.
We always end up getting going, and then I have to stop us and back up and say, okay, what is this game we're talking about again?
Yeah, exactly. It's not you, it's everyone.
It happens every time, so don't feel bad.
Okay. So Trail of Heroes is a high fantasy tabletop RPG, and it was inspired a lot by Rollmaster and, oddly enough, the Diablo series.
A great series.
Yes. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. It's set in the world of Gallipae, although it's quite easy to take that system and plant it in a different setting. So, yeah.
So how's the base mechanics of this game work? We open the box, we see all the stuff. What do we do?
That is a good question. It is a D percentile based system, but I'm just going to talk about standard because that's the only one that's published at the moment.
Okay.
Because I don't think I said this on air, but there are 3 versions of the game. There's basic, standard, and advanced, which are all different levels of complexity. So in standard, it's a D percentile based system. Most of the damage base is like a D20 plus some D6s. The damage dice are based on your class. And then the weapons and items add a static bonus to your damage most of the time. Spells work completely differently. There's great spell mechanics. You can specialize in most spells, allowing you to have a character who, at legendary level, which is 16th level, it's just as plausible to have a fireball mage as it would be to have a firebolt mage. Firebolt is a first level spell. Fireball is, again, a third level spell. So massive difference there. Having a first level spell and having a mage focus in that all the way through the game is something not a lot of systems can do. And then, you can specialize. Fighters can specialize in weapons. Archers are like the rogue / archer / ranger type thing. And they can choose on an individual level basis whether to spend more points in thieving abilities or spend more points in standard abilities. And I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a point buy system for leveling up.
Okay.
There's very little rolling in the leveling up. There is some, because I recognize that people like to roll dice.
And it's the click-clack of the math rocks. We just gotta love it.
Exactly.
We collect shiny math rocks for a reason.
Yeah, I have a drawer of 1,000 of them sitting right next to me. And I'm not kidding. There's literally 1,000 of them. I counted. But yeah, so everybody loves rolling dice, and a lot of people like rolling dice, but they don't like the fact that if they roll bad, their character's going to suck. So I kind of balanced the amount that it has to matter, because there's also a lot of people that are like, you know what, I want my rolls to matter because then it gives more depth to my character. So there's a few roles that really matter. There's a few roles that don't really matter except for role playing. And I tried to make it as balanced as possible between whether they matter and whether they don't. An example of that would be toughness. That's a good example. So toughness is damage reduction versus elemental attacks, because you've got a stat against physical attacks, which is armor, that does the same thing. It's damage reduction versus physical attacks. But spells bypass armor, so toughness plays a big role. But you only get anywhere from 1 to 8 toughness to begin with.
Gotcha.
So it's really not as big of a deal if you don't roll well, because it's a difference of at most 7 from maximum to minimum.
Okay.
But it's still something that you want high. It's just not something that's going to make or break your character.
Now, I love the way you're describing the way you do that point buy with your characters, particularly with leveling up. Have you ever by chance played, this is an older game, but it was called Divine Divinity. It came out around 98, early 2000, somewhere in there.
That would have been right around the time that I would have been making these games, but
Okay.
No, I have never played it.
Okay, it's an older game. It led on. People have played Divinity 2, Divinity 1. It was the same studios. I believe it was Larian Studios. But this was their first game they put out. And again, it was very much like a Diablo clone. But they had that point-buy system with your characters where you could go and you had your 3 basic classes. And then, like, for your wizards, you could sit there and each level you got so many points. So you could buy a new spell, or you could just start amping up your lower level spells. So I kind of get that feel where you're talking about, your Firebolt mage, where if you just dumped all of your points in that Firebolt hit like a freaking truck.
Right.
Same thing with a rogue. You could have a rogue that could see a bunch of stuff, but then if you try to multi-class once or twice, you could start picking up some magic abilities or some of the warrior abilities. And it did give your characters a lot of flexibility, which was a lot of fun with the game.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you got to remember when I'm talking about a Firebolt mage that does 76d6 Firebolt damage, one thing you got to remember is that mage sacrificed a lot to get there. And I'm talking about a real specific example. I played that mage that got to 16th level, and he was rolling 76 d6s every
That's
Firebolt.
A lot of d6s. But he probably had like 2 hit points, right?
Yeah, I bought a lot of d6s for that. And you don't automatically get health leveling up. You have to spend points in it. So yes, I was low in health, but I was also low in defense. I was low in armor. I was lower in casting accuracy, which are all important spots. Like these days, I would never make a mage like that because I'm like, if I get attacked, I'm screwed because defense is going to stop them from hitting you. Armor is going to stop them from doing a lot of damage to you. And if you don't have either of those things, also if you have low health because you're only spending 1 point in health every time you level up, you're out of luck if someone hits you.
Right.
Yeah, you're not a glass cannon, you're a paper cannon.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
You're a party popper.
But it's one hell of a party, let me tell you.
Oh my.
Best fireworks in town. Better than Gandalf.
Now, one mechanic I had read when I was reading kind of over your base rules for this that I kind of found exciting was you were saying that you pre-generate a map and you're delving through these dungeons, as it were, but your party can choose to bail out of the dungeon whenever they want. Is that correct?
Yes, that is something that has survived from the original game where it was much more cut and dry with the adventures.
Okay.
But yes, you can do that. I figure that'll probably end up being a GM to GM basis, whether they cut that out or not. But as a GM, I always allow that to happen just because I believe, honestly, that the players and the GM should work together to decide what the quest is. It shouldn't just be the GM saying, this is what you have to do. You can't stop until you've done it all. If the whole purpose of my system in general is to let the players do whatever they want, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I like this mechanic a lot for a couple of reasons. One, I can see this as a bunch of like easy one-offs where instead of having to run a huge campaign and have everyone getting there for a scheduled date and doing whatever, if you can show up, you play. If you don't, you don't for whatever day. I think this would be a lot of fun too, like if you were at a game store or like a big convention type thing, and you could get 3 or 4 groups that were working over several sessions. You could have like a guild competition to see who got the most treasure over a set time.
I
then
like
have like
that.
some sort of like reward for the winning group or whatever. But this way, you have your players playing with each other, but they're also competing against other groups doing the same thing. And that gives a wider competitive multiplayer feel to it, which I think would work beautifully with this game.
I like that. Thomas, remember that when we go to RavenCon next year.
Yeah. I'd also like to interject that one of the key components to our game is to have fun. And this also plays into that as well, because if players aren't having fun with the campaign, then they have the ability to back out and rethink of what they're trying to do
that's
next.
also extremely important. I mean, as Ian said many times, the point of a game is, in fact, to have fun. It's not like a second job or something like that.
And it's on both sides, too. Like, it's not only the players that need to have fun, the GM also has to have fun. So that's why there's control on both sides.
Yeah, because people often forget that the GM is another player at the table.
This is very
Yes,
true. Yeah, that is a hard thing to remember when you're in the middle of the game.
That is a wonderful way to put it.
It's also hard to remember when you're the person running the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it gets difficult, like with dice rolls in general. Like today, I rolled 3 vital hits on one character 3 rounds in a row with my hardest hitting monster, an ogre named Big Bones. And he was doing like 100 damage before the vital, like 100 to 108 damage before the vital. So that would have ended up killing that character. And I don't generally like to fudge dice rolls. I don't generally like to do anything like that. But when it's threatening the enjoyment of the game, then I start doing it a little bit behind the scenes. This time I was a little bit more blunt. I said, listen, I'm just going to roll real dice from now on, because I was using Roll20. And I'm like, I'm going to roll real dice this time, and this last vital is just going to be replaced by the real dice. And I happen to roll lower, and there have been people in the past that say things like, well, if you're going to have them re-roll a die, why don't you just make it a certain amount? I'm like, no, that's not the same thing, because a re-roll of the die says it still could be random. It's just you have a better chance of doing well. And I've never been good with probabilities, so that possibly isn't true. Thomas could tell me that. But so, I mean, like, it's still random. So if I don't let them roll infinitely until they do great, it's not the same thing. And I've only ever really give people 2 rolls in a row.
I mean, that's one of those things you really kind of want to hammer out in a session 0.
Yeah.
And that's the games I've played. I'm like, I always consider session 0 kind of like your game settings when you're setting up like a video game. Like, do you want to play this absolutely strictly rules as written? Do you want to allow some homebrew? If your characters are dropping, do you want me to like somehow preserve them, or are you fine with, scrubbing a character and rewriting a new one? And this
Right.
kind of gives the players an idea of what they're setting up, but it also gives them the chance to choose. And if they have a problem with it later, I'm like, this is what we discussed during session 0. This is what you guys wanted. So here we are.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Session zeros are something I wasn't taught about when I was growing up. My dad was pretty much my main influence on how to play these games, and I just didn't know their existence. As soon as I started going on Twitter, which was actually not that long ago, relatively, I realized, oh, session zeros are a thing. This is a great idea.
It really, really is. Yeah. I was going to say, now with your monster, you talked about this giant ogre you had, and the way from the rules you say your maps are kind of generated beforehand. Is there a level progression of the strength of your monsters and enemies and foes? How is that determined? Like, as you go through, do things continually get more difficult, or are the monsters randomly generated each time?
What I generally do is that's up to the GM and the players and what they decide they want to do. But what I generally do is the monsters go up in level as you go up in level. I tend to pair it with areas that would make sense to have higher level monsters as you go on. Because there's no point in being like, okay, well, I'm going to fight this dragon in the middle of this forest that's known to mostly have goblins.
Right.
It doesn't compute. But if you're like, okay, I'm going to the island of dragons, I'm going to fight a dragon. Okay, that makes sense. But it also makes sense. This is something my dad and I disagree on. It also makes sense if you're lower level that you'll be fighting the lower level monsters, and if you're higher level, you'll be fighting the higher level monsters. Or else sometimes it gets bored or it just gets really miserable because the players are slaughtered every time.
Right.
And there is an aspect of run away if you can't handle it, but it shouldn't always be on that.
No, absolutely not. And that's other games that I enjoy, but the original Darkest Dungeon was really good about that, where you constantly delved into dungeons. And there was that ability, if you went too far, if you overextended, if you got stomped by something that popped up that was a random encounter, the party always did have the option to bounce out of the dungeon. And there was various penalties for that weren't terribly too severe, but that option always existed, which I think was a wonderful mechanic within the game.
Yeah, totally. But to go back and answer your question more accurately and specifically, monsters have what is called an EL, which is similar to the challenge rating of D&D. However, there's one big difference. It's not meant to be taken as challenge rating. It's meant to be used to calculate experience points, but it's not meant to be used to calculate who you should be fighting. The way the mechanics work, it's a lot easier to just do the math and figure out how tough these monsters need to be to fight the characters. I don't do the math personally. I throw a couple obviously easy encounters at them and then say, oh, I got a feel for how you are, and ramp it up from there. But it's also very easy to do the math and then give them the right EL monster. And the ELs are also based on a typical encounter with that monster. So the EL of a goblin is 1.5. That basically is saying that the EL is based on a bunch of goblins, not one goblin, because you usually run into a bunch of goblins at a time. Now, if it's an EL of I don't have ELs of dragons, so that's a bad example. EL of like a really powerful demon like a Legamto. I believe that's like an EL 8 or 9, and that is meant to be just one Legamto and a bunch of demons that are underlings.
Okay. So you have, no, I can totally get the feel for that. You'll have your big thing or your minion, or you'll have a small horde, and each individual piece of that horde is a certain amount of experience points, if I get the feel for it, correct?
Right.
Okay, perfect.
And it used to be, way, way back in the day, I tried to balance the experience a similar way to 5e, where it's just a flat amount of experience for each level. I don't know if your audience generally played before 5e, but at least within 3.5, which is what I played a lot of. It was you add up all the experience and then you divide it, and you had to look on a chart to see what experience goes with what level, and then you divided it by however big the party was. It was this big, complicated calculation. From my understanding, 5e has simplified this to, okay, this monster is worth 50 experience points for everybody.
Sometimes it depends on how you're running the rules, but yeah, often, yes.
And I tried that, which really worries me about 5e because I haven't done that much with it. But I did try that, and I just couldn't get it to balance. So I went back to like a similar thing with 3.5, except I used different math and I made it different.
Gotcha. No, that works. And I mean, and it's a lot better than like second edition where the experience went to whoever actually killed the monster, whoever delivered the killing blow.
Yeah.
That was a big issue. You know, you'd have people like sniping people's kills, and you'd have like a level 7 cleric and then like a bunch of fighters and stuff who never got to kill anything. Like, hey, they're all level 1 still.
Yeah.
It usually ended up the other way around. Your fighters ended up getting up around
Killing
level
things.
7, 8, and then your cleric is level 2 because they're a healer and they're not actually landing killing blows.
Right, yeah.
I'm remembering Rollmaster now.
And then you have first edition where it was experience for gold, so you had to find the treasure hoards in order to actually gain levels.
Right.
Yeah. When I first started playing tabletop games, it was Rollmaster. And I was like 5 or 8 or something like that. And my dad would do all the complicated stuff for us, and then we'd have fun. And I don't know if this is the actual rules because I was too young to know. But this is how he ran it. You get experience for fights, you get experience for treasure, you get experience for spectacular things with spells and such. But it was also that sort of thing where the person who did it got the experience. And that was something that always bugged me, but I didn't realize how much it bugged me until I started to play a different system.
I could see that, yeah.
Because when it's your first system, you kind of got blinders on, especially if you're like a little kid obsessed with this game that you've heard your dad tell stories about for your whole life. And you just want to play this game and pretend to be someone you're not and have all this fun. You don't really notice all the little problems. You notice how great your character is. You notice all the role-playing experiences you had. You notice the fun stuff. And like, even when my characters died, well, came close to dying, none of them died. This was the time I didn't care about it the most. Since then, I have become a forever DM because I panic easily as a player. And I get very controlling. And I understand that's not a good way to be a player. It's especially not fun when you have other players. So I try to limit my playing as a player because it's just not fair to everyone else. And I do enjoy GMing. But I wasn't that way back then because I was so new to it.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a bit of knowing yourself as a player that's very important too. And you can only know yourself as a player so much if you're still young or new to the game either way.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to direct this one at Thomas because Thomas hasn't gotten a whole lot of talking time. This is sort of a marketing pitch sort of question.
All right.
What makes your game quote unquote not D&D?
Oh,
Because, you know, we have to talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
yes.
Whenever we're talking about fantasy role-playing games, D&D is eponymous with fantasy role-playing. So what makes Trail of Heroes not D&D?
Well, I think the key here is for us customization. So D&D are very limited in the amount of ways you can develop your characters. We're not. The GMs and players have much more control over gameplay. And then the other thing is we're percentile based. So the whole D20 thing is out the window. And then as Andy was specifying before, the whole experience and stuff is all rewritten and I think a little bit easier to handle. So it's just, I think it's easier to read. It's easier to play. It's just easier, I think. I mean, I have not played 5e.
Yes, you have.
I have played 5e. I just haven't played it a whole lot. It's been 9 years, I think, since I played 3.5, at least. So, as Andy was saying, my blinders are a little bit on because I've been only playing Trail of Heroes at the moment. So, it's hard at this point for me to compare it between the two. But
Okay.
I don't know. When I switched, I liked it way better, and I haven't gone back. So, I think that's saying something.
One possible difference I think I've noticed is from what I've seen, I don't know if I've missed it. Is there a whole lot of like story arc with Trail of Heroes, or is it solely like let's get in and get to the dungeon and the combat and the treasure looting, or will there be chances for like in-depth roleplay and, like I said, like story arcs and campaigns, or is it all just in and go?
No, it's 100%. You can do both.
Okay.
I've done one-offs where we just hop in, do a dungeon, do a map, and that's it. We did one last Halloween where we'd had 3 or 4 people play, and we just killed a bunch of zombies, and that was it. Or any other of my other role-playing experiences. I've done 3 or 4 campaigns now with different parties, and I had a Cyclops that I rolled so badly on one roll that I checked. And I do this every now and then with my players. I roll a random D100 to see what happens. And I rolled so shitty that this Cyclops now all sees like butterflies in his mind. And he was like, oh, butterfly, I'm not going to attack right now. I'm good. So I add little bits of flavor in every now and then like that. And then Andy's really good at creating like storylines around it. So basically he has this entire like empire built up around it. So there's a bunch of role-playing opportunities there. We have guilds and all other sorts of things you can join that allow for good role-playing opportunities. So yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, even if you don't have your own world already built to implement this system into, we have a world built with it that you can jump into and have a bunch of role-playing opportunities as well.
Awesome.
By the way, that whole butterfly thing got incorporated in the World Anvil article for Cyclopses.
That's awesome. We got hippie Cyclops. That's kind of what my heart needs right now. I need like a pedal sniffing Cyclops. Ooh, flowers.
No, that Cyclops was a lot of fun to play, I have to say.
We got to get back to that campaign. That ended on a really big cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Now, James, we have to separate the Cyclops from the Lotus Eaters. Those are 2 different parts of the Odyssey.
Very true, yeah. The Cyclops could visit the Lotus Eaters maybe once or twice.
I suppose.
You never know. Maybe he had shipments come in with his sheep.
The Cyclops was with the Golden Fleece, right?
No,
he was just a separate island.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then Odysseus blinded him and then bragged about it on his way out, which is why he went to his father Poseidon, and Poseidon ended up making Odysseus take 20 years to get home.
Well, because, once again, Odysseus, as normal, exceeds the acceptable level of douchebaggery.
he does. He really does.
I mean, that qualifies for most of the Greek heroes. Let's just be completely honest
about
that.
Fair.
I mean, they're demigods, so they automatically see themselves as being superior to your average humans, and so they act accordingly, which is not great.
Yeah. I read a quote last week that would also be a great band name, but Hubris Made Manifest.
Yeah, that would be a really good band name.
But the interesting point about the Cyclops in Greek mythology with the Odyssey is that originally, going further back than that one particular epic, Cyclopses were considered to be much more civilized and advanced. They weren't these bumbling idiots that they are in the Odyssey. They were master smiths that helped create, I think they helped create the lightning bolt, the helm of invisibility, and the trident for the, Zeus.
Yeah, they lived with the Titans, did they not? Or they worked with the Titans at the very least.
Yeah, I think they helped out the gods, though, in the final revolt. I think that's why they made those 3 things, was to help defeat the Titans.
Right.
I'm not sure, though. It's been a while since I had to read about that.
Yeah. And that one Cyclops, I mean, he was living on an island by himself. He was kind of an outcast anyway. And even still, he's herding sheep. So, I mean, he's not completely primitive. But that is a vastly different rabbit trail for a different time.
Yes.
This is true. I'm sorry. I just can't leave
that.
No,
I will delve into Greek and Roman myth with you any day. That's just...
we never follow rabbit trails on this podcast.
No, but this is your podcast. And, and again, if you want to talk about Greek and Roman history with your product, then yeah, I'm all for it.
And there's actually a little snippets that Andy has included in his storyline that draw. It's like, what am I trying to say?
Inspiration?
It's inspiration from like Greek and Roman mythology. So
I would absolutely love that.
He's done a really good job of including snippets of history into his storylines.
And not just Greek and Roman mythology.
Oh, yeah,
I've got Mr. Kappa.
Yep.
I've got Lord Hanuman. I've got the Baba Yagas.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I got my own twist on all of them.
You're doing my geek heart happy, man. You really are.
I even got Kelpie. Madam Kelpie is a big part of the world. So
I love it. I absolutely love it.
All right, so what's the sort of feel that you're hoping to go for with this game? Is this supposed to be, just this epic fantasy sort of feel, or is it supposed to be a high lethality sort of game? Is it a combination? Is it something completely different? Where on all of those spectra does Trail of Heroes fall?
Hey, Thomas, you want to take this one again, since you haven't talked much? Or do you want me to take it?
No, you're better suited for this one.
Okay, just trying to include you.
No, you're good.
So the feel that I go for, which again, I don't hold any GMs or players to this feel. It can be done differently, but the feel I go for is like this epic fantasy thing where players don't often die, but there's definitely danger there. And they don't often die, though. There's definitely a lot of NPCs and adventurers in general that all play a part in the game. But the NPCs don't usually make it past like 5th level. The way I figure it is these players are playing someone special that just happens to get past that level of, well, at this point, most things are going to kill us. And they happen to exceed that point in skill and abilities and get to the point where it's sort of like that syndrome you mentioned with the Greek demigods. There were a lot of people who went around trying to be heroes, but there were a few people who were really special and made it past just being a hero. So that's the kind of feel that I'm going for. Definitely not a gritty, you're going to lose characters in every campaign type thing.
Okay.
Another way to put it is it's a very defense-oriented game as opposed to an offense-oriented game. I've noticed that in D&D, it's sort of like you're rushing to kill the person before they kill you.
Yeah, I can totally get that feel, yeah.
In Trail of Heroes, you're trying to make sure they don't kill you before you kill them, which sounds the same, but it's not at all. You have much more emphasis on not dying than you do on killing the other person.
Okay.
No, I can get behind that. That sounds good.
For example, the way I accomplished that was, in D&D you do significantly high damage compared to how much health things have. And in my game, at a certain point, you're going to as well. But you also have at least 3 to 4 defensive abilities, depending on the system. Actually, 3 to 5, depending on basic, standard, or advanced. But in standard, which I'll talk about now, and not talk about the other two because it's even more complicated. In standard, you've got defense, which I already mentioned is basically armor class. Armor, which is basically damage reduction. Dodge, which is % chance that an attack will miss if it rolled to hit. And by the way, most people don't get dodge, which is why it's only a few. And then you've got, obviously, health, which technically is a defensive stat because if you have a lot of health, you're going to die slower than if you have none or very little. So generally, everyone boosts 1 defensive stat at least, usually 2. But at least 1 is boosted. I've had a lot of fun with characters that deal tons of damage and have tons of health. And it's a very dangerous character to make because if you don't have a high armor and you don't have a high defense, you're going to get hit and you're going to take a ton of damage. But if you have like 500 health to start, which is a little stretching it, but if you have 500 health to start, you're not going to go down like that. You're going to go down a little slower. But that's pretty much the feel of it, is a very defense-oriented game.
Yeah, I could see that character being kind of like a naked Celtic berserker or something like that, just kind of running in, no armor, just swinging wildly. And I mean, when he hits, he hits.
Pretty much. His name was Paragor. He was a half-orc priest of the Deadly Circle.
Okay. So a question for Thomas now. We want this game. We want to grab it. How best do we get this in our grubby little hands?
All right. So we have a couple options for you. We have a Patreon page, which we have 3 different types of membership. So even with the most basic membership, you still get the game rules and all that stuff, and you'll be able to play to your heart's content. The higher up options just give you more bonus content and other features that go along with those options. And then we also have our website, where we have it sold as just a rule set on our website. And that doesn't come with a membership, so all you get is just the rules and that's it.
Okay.
And I assume we'll have both of those sites posted somewhere with this podcast as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the links to those in the show notes.
Absolutely. Yep. Now, will these all be digital copies only, or is there going to be like a physical box copy out at some point?
So these are all digital as of now. I think at some point we might be doing a convention whenever those finally come back. And we'll have a hard copy for the convention, but as of now it's all digital.
Awesome.
And there's a reason for that, and I got to tell you the reason for that. That is because when you buy the digital copy, you're not buying a PDF, you're buying a Google folder. So in that Google folder, let's say you buy the $7.20 copy that you just get off our website. That'll come with the main rule book, which is all one rule book. It's the only thing you need. And anytime we revise it, which we will be doing basically patches, just like any computer game. So we'll eternally be doing updates. So anytime you buy that, you'll get all of the updates as we complete them. And it'll be categorized separately. So you can go in there and you can say, well, I was in the middle of a campaign in this update, and I don't want to go to the new one yet. I'm going to finish the campaign in this. You don't have to switch over.
Okay. No, that sounds great.
And with the Patreon, it's the same thing. And I will mention again that the rules, the one-time payment for the rules only on our website is $7.20. For Patreon, $3 a month gets you the rules plus some free content, which is available for the $7.20 again, obviously, because it's free. And then you get a little bit of extra content with the $3 a month too. At $5 a month, you get the base rules plus any rule books that we came out with after that. And then all the content on Patreon that is $5 or less. And there's a good number of that. I won't go into all the details. And then the $10 a month on Patreon gives you all our games as we release them. And many of them will be pre-release and then updated and updated and updated. And those you will get real-time updates instead of having to wait until we do a significant update and release a new patch with the work in progress things.
Awesome. Okay.
Right now on the $10 a month, we have Trail of Heroes Standard and Basic. We do not have Advanced out just yet. And Basic is quite not finished. But it is playable. It is playable, as is evident by the fact that we've gotten to a 5th or 6th level party from first level with Thomas and me doing a playtest.
Yes.
So it is playable. It's just not finished yet.
So it's an alpha, not beta?
Technically, it's beta because people can buy it that are outside of our company.
Okay.
But it is, yeah. So $10 a month is definitely worth it. But for those people who just want to try the game, I would suggest $3 a month. Look at the game, see if you like it, play it for 2 months. Then if you don't like it, cancel the subscription. You'll still be paying less than you would if you bought the game a one-time payment.
That's a fair reason. I mean, that's not a bad plan.
So my last question is, what are your plans for Trail of Heroes going forward? What sort of content is in the works that you can tell us about that you're planning on putting out? What are some of the projected projects looking like for the future?
I'm going to answer that because that's kind of my job. And this whole company is these new products. So basically, right now in the works, I'm still working on the Trail of Heroes Basic a lot. I'm working on the NPC document, or as I have rebranded the acronym to Newly Presented Citizens. And that has 100 different NPCs with stat blocks for Trail of Heroes Standard, but no storyline to them, just their name and the stat block and the portrait. And it'll come with a folder with all the portraits in it, so you can download the portraits and put them on like Roll20 or whatever if you want. Or you can just do whatever you want with the document because it's got the portraits too. But those are the only ones that I'm actually actively working on. There's a bunch other that are technically in the works. We've got Powers of Arithmetic, which is sort of something that's going to come out. I won't go into that really. It's complicated and we don't have time. We've got Trail of Heroes Advanced. We've got Zombie Dance, which is a very lighthearted political game. If you can believe that exists, is possible even. And then we've got the Leopard of Rudaprag, which was based off of the actual Leopard of Rudaprag and the story behind it, which was a leopard that killed and ate a bunch of people. I don't remember where that was, but Thomas probably knows. And then there is The Greatest Lineage, is a Age of Empires type game, but much more complicated. Then we've got, what am I missing, Thomas? Oh, Flea's Headhunters and Wars over Gallipae. And I've got a book that I'm finishing up, like a novel. And I've got just so many things.
Maps.
It makes me, yeah, massive amounts of things.
There will always be stuff on Patreon, that's for sure.
Yes, definitely.
No, that sounds like you guys have a ton of stuff coming up. That always, like, when I want to invest in something, if I want to buy something, like, if the standalone game's good, great. But if you're like, hey, we've got a bunch of stuff coming out, and we're not going to DLC and charge you a nickel dime you for every little thing that comes out afterwards. Like, I'm getting this and so much more that totally makes it worth my dollar for me. So
right.
I like
$10 a month will get you all of that.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the interview portion of today's episode. One of the things that we like to do with our guests when they come on is we roll a bunch of dice on our monster mashup table and create a monster on the fly.
Awesome.
So if you guys are up for that and you have some dice available.
I got some metal dice.
Ooh.
I'm going to, because there's two of you, I'm going to let you decide amongst yourselves who rolls what when.
Okay.
But we'll go ahead and get some dice rolling and figure out what in the world we're making today.
Chaos Woohoo.
All right.
All right, so the first thing I'm going to need is a D4 roll. This is the method of locomotion. How does this sucker move around?
Thomas, you can roll that because I have to search through my dice to get what I need.
How many legs do I have? That's the question. Oh, I got 4.
A 4? It swims.
I'll snap.
All right.
And the plot twists.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, next up is a D6 roll for what does it eat?
Oh,
I'll take that one. I got a D6 that I really like to roll. It's my black wood dice with skulls inlaid in it.
Ooh.
I got a 2.
A 2. It eats plants.
that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
So it swims and it eats plants.
I'm seeing a goose.
Peace was never an option. All right, next up is going to be a D8 for the size.
All right. 6.
6 is going to be huge.
A giant geese.
We end up
The
getting,
giant rubber duckies they have floating in the ports.
we end up getting a lot of huge swimming things on this table. It just happens that way.
Yeah.
I think that is the size that we have gotten more than any other.
Huh.
Because I know we've gotten it at least 3 times.
Huge, but not necessarily swimming. I think we've only had 2 huge swimming monsters before.
I mean, the last one that we did with Lewis from Dead Channel, that one was a huge swimming creature.
Right. That was a fun one.
That was so much fun. Anyway, back to this one.
Was it also an omnivore?
It ate fruits and vegetables, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so next up is another D8 roll for social organization.
I'll take that. 4.
4. We got that one again. It's a family, so matriarch plus patriarch with offspring.
Okay. I'm still not leaning away from the giant rubber duckies.
I like it. I like where that starts. All right, so this is where we may end up throwing a monkey wrench into that, though. We need a D10 roll for the number of limbs.
Oh. All right.
What Thomas thought he was rolling for at first.
Yep. Oh boy. 7.
Okay, so 7 limbs.
I can still see a giant rubber ducky. I'm still
Yeah.
there.
Well, it's at least 2 legs, 2 wings, and then 3 extras to assign as we choose.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Y'all need to make that a D percentile so you can have 100-handers.
Oh boy.
Yeah. What if it's like a hippogriff ducky?
Yeah. Or manticore ducky.
Yeah,
Oh,
there we
Manticore,
go.
that would
there
be
we go.
perfect because I'd have the
Yeah,
scorpion
because 4
sting.
legs, 4 legs, 2 wings, and the tail. Yeah,
Yep.
that
Okay,
would
I
be,
like
that
it.
would be
That
7.
works. Yeah.
All
Since
right.
we're talking about Greek mythology here. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next up is a D12 roll for the
I'll take
method
that.
of defense.
All right. 9.
Oh boy.
9. It has a spear limb. Again.
Yeah,
That works.
yeah.
That works.
It's a manticore.
It's just fitting together nicely, I think.
Yeah.
And his name is Ducky.
Okay.
Because he has duck wings. He doesn't have eagle wings. He has duck wings.
Duck wings. I like it.
Yes.
And he quacks.
Like Thomas's cat.
Yep.
All right. So next up is a D20 roll for Quirks.
Oh, all right. As in the physical element, right?
We're going to find out.
Oh, 13.
13. Digs/creates pitfall traps.
Okay.
Interesting.
I could see this as like maybe it has like a base level understanding of agriculture. And so it furrows or plows for its own crops to a point. But then if things are coming, it can dig like a furrow moat to keep things backing away if it's not quite in the ocean yet. Or maybe for like around its nest where its clutch
Well,
would be.
it's an ambush predator.
Oh, there we go.
It can't
Yeah.
be a predator, though.
Yeah.
It was a plant eater.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I could see like a defensive moat for like a clutch or a nest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That would
Okay.
work.
Yeah. So it digs these pits for laying its eggs in, and they just happen to be in a location. Think of it kind of like the way that sea turtles come onto the beach and dig a hole to lay their eggs in.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
I can see
Yeah.
that.
And so whenever these eggs are there, it creates this pit that you can fall into.
I could see that.
All right.
Fair enough.
Or even pitfalls before they get to the eggs to deter a nest raider.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I can. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What if these are golden eggs, you know?
Yeah. We'll have to find out on the D100 because that is a D100 possibility.
Uh-oh.
But thinking like they dig kind of like a donut. So there's this little spire of earth in the middle, and that's where they lay the eggs. And then they sort of dig out around it to make this sort of moat almost.
Okay.
And then they cover it up just very rudimentary and or even just leave it open.
Or breathe a water jet into it to fill it up.
That's also a possibility, yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, so as I suggested, next up is going to be a D100 roll because now we make it weird.
Yeah, one weird already.
Yeah.
All right, Thomas, are you doing this one or am I? I don't remember
It's
what
you.
order it was. It's me.
You. Yep.
All right.
Well, we typically do it twice, so you're both going to get to roll. on
Oh,
this.
nice.
Okay. There we go. That's it. Okay. I'm glad I wasn't playing a game. 15.
15. Bounces instead of taking fall damage.
All right.
Again,
But it
because,
has wings.
It's a rubber ducky.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Or it can't necessarily fly, it can just break its fall just enough.
Yep.
And you got four legs, so it
like
kind of
chickens.
cushions. Yeah.
Like chickens.
Okay. Yeah.
Rubber ducky, you're the one.
So like it has an innate like feather fall
Yeah,
ability.
I like it.
All right. I'm just thinking about Goblin Cannonball in our game now. All they do is literally jump out of towers and bounce on people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Uh,
So we need one more D100 roll.
All right. Let's see what my D percentile can come up with. 78.
So you roll way better than I did.
Oh boy. Is attracted to music and will follow around any tune.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Thomas is the musical guy in the group.
Yes.
So you know where this would be perfect? The Delta is right by New Orleans, where you've got like the river ships and all the bluegrass and
there we
stuff.
go.
Yes.
It
Excellent.
only shows up once a year at Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
It's the best float ever. Maybe that's when it comes up to lay its eggs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The music is loud enough where it says, "Oh, I want to come to shore," and then it lays its eggs.
That's awesome. I love it.
And then it defends those eggs from the Mardi Gras people.
Yes.
The eggs look like a giant pile of Mardi Gras beads.
Beads? Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well,
Like,
see,
but like the individual beads are like the size of your head because this is a huge creature.
Right.
yeah. Well, I think it's just it looks weird enough to where everybody's in party mode, so they just think it's other humans inside of a costume drunk on the beach.
Yeah, kind of like the big dragons at Chinese New Year.
Exactly.
I love it. All right, so just to recap what we got. So it swims, it eats plants, it's huge in size, it has a family social structure, 7 limbs, one of them is a spear limb. I think we decided that it was going to be Manticore-esque with that spear tail
Yes.
kind of going.
Yep,
Mhm.
that works.
It digs/creates pitfall traps in its egg laying. It bounces instead of taking fall damage. And it's attracted to music and will follow around any tune. So the question now is, what do we call it?
A groupie. Wait, what?
I love it. Yeah, a groupie. Yeah.
It bounces instead of taking fall damage. It's so drunk it follows around musicians, right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
And we can have part of it be like fish aspect, so we get that grouper
Yeah, there we go. I
put
like
into it. Yeah. So it's part grouper, part duck with this weird like stabby tail.
Yeah.
This is just bizarre. I love it.
And it's got to have a duckbill and quack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Although I think it would be funnier to have a quack coming out of a fish mouth.
It is funnier to have a quack coming out of a cat's mouth, so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a whole lot of fun. I always get a kick out of doing this part. Okay. Another thing that we like to have our guests do whenever they come on is plug someone else in the community. Be they another TTRPG creator, an artist, a musician, a streamer, a podcast, anything that can be put into our gaming community. Who would you like to shout out today?
I think Thomas can agree that the Ultimate Games Master app is going to be a fantastic app. We've been working with them for quite some time. That's one of the projects I've been working on is playtesting their app. And they're going to be, what do they call it? I know they're not calling it a platform anymore. Is it a companion app, Thomas?
I haven't heard what they're trying to call it. What they've
I
changed.
think that's right. I am a little bit familiar with that particular project.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I've got all sorts of stuff. It's our only experience with 5th edition D&D.
Correct.
Because that's all they have on it at the moment. But they are making it so that it's quite easy to put your own system on or make your own changes. You can already change anything you want on 5th edition, and it's really cool and easy to do. And what I liked about it the most when I first started using it, it has held true, is that it forces you to be organized in a way that I cannot be organized otherwise. And it lays out everything in a nice way where it's not cluttered. It's got everything there, or at least it will eventually once they've released it to the public. But it's spectacular. So anyone listening, if you haven't already checked out Ultimate Games Master, go check them out. Follow them, get in their Discord, and just keep up to date on that, because I don't think you can get into the app now. I think they said their next release is later this month.
Oh, awesome.
And the other main person that I really wanted to shout out is Anton Rozovsky, who is our main artist for almost everything we do with our rule books.
Yeah, he's been super stellar this entire project.
Yeah, he does amazing black and white art for a great price. He calls it a sketch. It doesn't look like a sketch to me. He goes by Warlock Lord on Fiverr, and he's just a terrific artist. Both the black and white images and the color images he's done for us. And I think that's about all we really need to do a shout out to. Do you have any ideas, Thomas?
No, that pretty much covers it.
Sounds good. And now, finally, before we wrap up, can you go ahead and give us your social contact information, where we can find you, where we can find your projects, all of that sort of stuff? Plug yourself.
Hold on, I'm getting out my card so I can read it off exactly. I fortunately had the case with the cards right there next to the computer. All right. Our website is www.gallipae.com. That's Gallipae is spelled Gallipae. And then our Patreon is patreon.com/Gallipae. Again, that's Gallipae. And then our Twitter handle is @Lords LLC. And that's about all the information that we really need to.
All right.
All right, awesome.
Well, Thomas, Andrew, thank you so very much for joining us today on Undercommon Taste. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm actually really excited to see this project and the other versions that you guys are coming out with. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you, everyone, for listening today. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas for future episodes, please send us an email at undercommontaste@gmail.com or send us a direct message through our Twitter account @UCTHomebrew. I'm still putting up our Shakespeare and Insult page-a-day calendar-inspired roleplay prompts 6 days a week. They go up on the Twitter account and get cross-posted to our Instagram and Facebook accounts @UndercommonTaste. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/undercommontaste. All of our write-ups go up on our Patreon, both the free and the exclusive ones for our patrons. So if you would like to help support the show financially, please consider coming over and becoming a patron. We are also on Discord. The link for our Discord is going to be in the show notes.
You can find our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. As always, please give us a rate and a review. This helps increase our visibility and lets us know what you want to hear more of.
Thanks once more for listening. Stay safe, and we'll see you again next week.
Happy gaming.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Undercommon Taste. If you enjoyed what you heard, please pass it along to your friends. If you have comments, suggestions, or ideas, you can email them to us at undercommontaste@gmail.com. If we like your idea, it may make it into a future episode. You can find us wherever you find your podcasts, and we would greatly appreciate any likes, ratings, and comments you could provide. Find us on social media. We're at Undercommon Taste on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and on Twitter at the handle @UCTHomebrew. If you would like to help support the show financially, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/undercommontaste. Our theme is Massacre Anne, written and performed by Mary Crowell and used with permission. You can find her online at marycrowell.bandcamp.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Mary C. Crowell. Thanks again for listening, and stay safe. You'll hear from us again soon.